Good evening and welcome. This is a meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee of the Halton District School Board for Tuesday, January 9th, 2024, the first SEAC meeting of this new year. Given that we're electing our new chair and vice chair this evening, I'll start off the meeting and facilitate the election of the chair process. And once completed, I'll turn the balance of the meeting over to our new chair. In accordance with Ontario Regulation 463 and 97 and the guidelines effective February 1st, 2021, the HDSB promotes community engagement and participation by having processes in place for members of the public to ask questions. So a Google form was attached to the agenda and distributed in advance of the meeting and is also posted on the HDSB SEAC webpage. Questions posed during the live streamed meetings of SEAC may be answered during the meeting, particularly those related to agenda items, or at the following meeting at the discretion of the chair. For efficiency, multiple questions received that are similar in nature may be grouped together at the discretion of the chair or vice chair, and questions will not be attributed. Notation will be made if multiple people ask the same question, and any questions that contain language that is hateful or discriminatory will not be considered. So first, we'll start with a roll call to record who's in attendance. So if you could please say that you're present, and we'll go by association, starting with Autism Ontario, Jennifer Laguerre.
Present.
And Amanda Winch. I understand Amanda's going to join late. The Association for Bright Children, Kate Lambacher. And Sarika Kanithi. The Center for Diverse Learners, Alison Brindle.
Present.
And Diane Vanden Bosch. Community Living North Halton, Evelyn Bursey. Or Angel Zuzik. Community Living Burlington, Nadia Torek.
Present.
Easter Seals Society, Melissa Dockery.
Present.
Or Sarah Lansley.
Present.
The Halton Down Syndrome Society, Sophia Siddiqui.
Present.
The Voice for Children who are Deaf of Heart or Hard of Hearing, Kathy Turner.
Present.
And Aaron Spruill. No, but I do see Evelyn has just joined, so if we could note that, as well as Amanda Winch. Our members at large, Keisha Klassen.
Present.
I know she's here.
She said present. It was just really quiet.
Okay. And Katie Schleifer.
Yep, present.
And Melissa Summer. Okay, and our trustees, Trustee Ahmet. Trustee Baxter.
Good evening. Trustee Ahmed sent his regrets, but we do have Trustee Zhang joining us this evening.
Wonderful. And I think I saw Trustee Zhang join.
Yep, present.
Good evening. Okay, thank you. That's everyone. And we have from staff, we have Conan Spruan, Principal of Special Education, Stacey Farrell-Bangerter, Vice Principal of Special Education. We've got Roxana Nagoy-Njay from our Business Services, Allison Vader-Ippolito from Human Resources, and Ian Godette from Facility Services. So we have a great deal of staff tonight, so thank you very much. We're going to we're going to then do honoring of the land. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, water, plants, animals, ancestors that walk before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. So we're now at item 1.3, the SEAC chair and vice chair election. We had one nomination submitted via our form that was circulated in December. That's Alison Brindle. And I'd like to see if there are any other nominations from the floor. All right, seeing none, I'm happy to acclaim Allison to the role of Chair of SEAC. So thank you, Allison, for continuing on in this position and for so adeptly facilitating our discussions and supporting HDSB students and families. So thank you. And I'm going to turn things over to you now for Vice Chair.
Great, thank you very much. And again, we had one nomination for Vice Chair, which Katie Schleifer. Would anybody else like to put forward a nomination for the Vice Chair position at this time? Okay, none being seen. Katie, you're acclaimed into the position of Vice Chair. And again, I'd like to thank you for your support and your willingness to step in when I haven't been able to make it. So thank you very much, Katie. Appreciate your help. Okay, that all being done, we're going to move on to the approval of tonight's agenda. That was sent out in advance. If there are any modifications or amendments that need to be made, please indicate your wish to speak in the chat box.
Okay. Would anyone like to move a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Kathy. Would anyone like to second this motion? Oh, thank you both, Sophia and Amanda.
Okay, so is there any opposition to the agenda as it stands? If you oppose the agenda, could you please indicate that now? It's easier that way around. Okay, not seeing any opposal. The agenda is approved unanimously. Next, we have the approval of our December the 5th, 2023 meeting minutes, which were provided. Were any errors or omissions noted?
Okay. Would anyone like to move a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you, Alison. Would anyone like to second this motion? Thanks, Carol.
Okay, are there any opposition to the minutes as recorded? If so, please indicate that in the chat box or put your hand up. Okay, no opposition being seen. The December the 5th meeting minutes are approved unanimously. So now we're going to begin our action items for today's meeting. And we're going to start our year with an update on the HDSB's Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act plan, the AODA plan. And very pleased to welcome Ian Godet and Alison Veda-Ippolita, and I hope I've got everybody's names correct, to give us a presentation on the work that's being done to support AODA.
Thank you, Allison, and good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here. I will say you're in for a treat as we've prepared a presentation specifically for SEAC. So for the trustees that are on this call, when we do bring forward the annual accessibility report next week to Committee of the Whole, we don't plan on doing a presentation. We just plan on sharing the report for information. I'll ask Allison if she can to please share the presentation with you. Awesome. So as you may be aware, myself and Allison co-chair the Accessibility Committee for the Halton District School Board, the Accessibility Planning Committee or Coordinating Committee. And with that, we do have representation from SEAC on the committee with Stacy as the SEAC rep. And so we feel there's a strong connection in terms of the work that we do that supports our students and our community within our schools. So if you go to the next slide, the summary of things that I'm hoping to cover here today will be, kind of the standard pillars of the AODA requirements. So policy and procedures are training and education, employment, information and communication, as well as the built environment. I will add that last year we did a membership recruitment, and so I want to report back on that. And you can see what our cover page for our annual accessibility status report will look like once we clear SEAC and Committee of the Whole next week. That report will be posted on our website. Next slide, please. So in terms of updates in the last year, we've updated our health and safety policy. There's a new one that was dated February 2023. And as well, another noteworthy accomplishment last year was the revised Creed and Accommodation Administrative Procedure. Next slide, please. So in terms of training and learning, there's a lot that goes on in our system. Some of the items that we've reported on in our annual report include the Ontario Human Rights Code and workplace accommodation and equitable hiring practices for new principals and vice principals. As well, we've got accessibility awareness for all new employees, and we've got the Ontario Human Rights Code and the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act working together for new employees. As well, we have had a fair bit of collaboration, I'll say, with the purchasing department to implement practices to ensure that not only, the work that we do with our staff, but our third-party service providers are also conducting training that they need to legislatively be compliant with. So with that, we've worked with our partners to ensure that our service providers are ensuring that they train their staff and their employees in accessible customer service standards, as well as the Human Rights Code. And then we've also done a fair bit of training with our library technicians in the elementary panel. You can see that we've worked on library websites and accessibility standards. We've also done work in assistive technologies for digital resources, and working with and supporting students with special needs in the library explicitly. As well, we've done some work with the Halton Student Transportation Services and their training, which has included customer service standards, as well as sensitivity training and diversity training. In terms of employment, accommodations are available to employees throughout the entire employment life cycle. So that includes the right through the recruitment, as well as the selection phase, and then obviously during their employment. So that is ongoing. And we reported last year that we had completed an audit and started steps towards our mental health first aid training. And this year, we're pleased to report that we've completed training at all of our sites for all people leaders. In terms of information and communication, we've reported on this previously that we are AA compliant with our website. As well, we have many resources available to our staff on the internet, and library services and purchasing department have collaborated and are starting to include the AODA criteria within our request for proposals that go out to third parties. And I'll say any questions or feedback we can certainly receive via email with the link that's located there. And as well, on our accessibility webpage, there is a feedback form for which Allison and I monitor and respond accordingly, or direct questions to the appropriate personnel. Built environment, we've had a lot of activities in the facilities department at a variety of our schools that have included anything from ramps to universal washrooms, door operators, elevator renewals and upgrades, and new installations, as well as stair lift replacements. And we've started to make improvements to some of our outdoor space and play areas to make them more accessible. And as well, we continue to upgrade our parking infrastructure so that people can more easily access our school sites and buildings.
Ian, can I just interrupt for a moment?
Certainly.
We have a question from one of our members, Catherine.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Hi, I actually do disability compliance reviews for websites as part of my job, and I'm just wondering if you have had a third party verify, or like what I have encountered many websites that claim to be compliant that are not, and it's an incredibly frustrating process, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the criteria are. So I'm wondering, what have you done to ensure compliance? Have you been audited externally?
Thanks for the question, Catherine. I don't know that I'm the expert to answer this. I know that we have used Accessibility in the past, and whether that's actually a third party or a tool that helps verify our compliance. We do work with our information and communications department, and I'd be happy to take this discussion offline to help support, and if you have ideas as to how we can do better. I know certainly we're always updating our website. And for example, being from the facilities area, we have lots of data that we try to share, and it's tabulated and often in PDF format, which I know is not necessarily friendly, but we continue to have the dialogue and collaborate and try to get better at that. So I can't speak for certainty whether we have had a third party, but we certainly do work with other experts on the team. And I know we've used some other tools in the past to help assess that.
I would love the opportunity to have a conversation with the right people, because right on your front page, you have something that I would say is inadequately compliant at the moment. So that's a conversation I would love to have, yes, if I could get in touch with you offline. Thank you.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Catherine. We're always looking to get better and stronger and make ourselves more accessible. So thank you for your feedback. The last item that I wanted to report on in terms of the work of the committee is that last year we did an outreach seeking community member participation, and very pleased to report that we've had two stakeholders representing parents, as well as two stakeholders representing the community, join our committee. And their insights and their experiences that they're sharing with us have been invaluable in terms of helping us to better identify some of the gaps that we have and strengthen our delivery around creating a more accessible Ontario for 2025. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and I'll say Allison is obviously here as well to support any further questions. But Catherine, I hope we can touch base offline and like I say, connect with the right people so that we can answer your question and help improve some of those barriers on our website.
Great. Does anybody have any questions at this time? I know I have a question, and it's not really related to the work that you do, but it's related more to the ethos of accessibility through HDSB and through society. I just wonder, there are a lot of opportunities as our children and our students work through their curricula, when they're doing presentations, when they're developing websites, to actually take some of this accessibility requirement information and build that into their projects. So like an essay would need to be accessible, or to be able to be read on a device, or when they do a presentation that they put in alt text. Just a question, really. As we try and improve society and make our children more knowledgeable, would there potentially be an opportunity, or is somebody able to take it back to the system to say, is there an opportunity for our children to learn this at a younger age so that we don't have to do as much AODA training and learning when they get to the workplace, because it's part of life?
Thanks for the question, Allison. And maybe I'll start with something and turn it over to Superintendent Ruddick to supplement if she has some thoughts. One of the things I will say is what I've presented today is our responsibility as an employer. And one of the things that I didn't highlight is, in fact, the education component that is contained within our annual update. There's a lot of work that goes on with our students on the education front. And so I will say we haven't highlighted that. Part of what our presentation is this evening is, as an employer, what are we obligated to do? How are we making advancements, and how are we making headway? And in fact, you know, I do hope, and I was wondering as I prepared the presentation with Allison earlier this week, that, you know, I don't attend all of the SEAC committee meetings, but I do hope that certainly some of the great work that's going on with our students in terms of the education portfolio is frequently discussed here. And that's why, you know, there's no need for us to highlight this at this meeting. So with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Superintendent Ruddick to speak to that.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. And Allison, I think your comment is really worthy of exploration, because certainly, you know, the pieces that we bring here and focus on here is the work that we're doing for our students with special education needs and with our students with special education needs. But really, you're talking about, you know, normalizing the AODA standards in all students' work, so that that it just becomes their normal in terms of how they develop a presentation or present something. So I can certainly take that back to the superintendent of school programs and have that discussion around how can we build that, because I think it is something that, you know, as teachers develop an awareness around what those AODA standards are, they could look at ways of embedding that into how students present their work. So it obviously doesn't impact the curriculum, but it just is a means of showing students learning. So yeah.
Yeah, and then just as they have to cite their work, you know, making sure that their work is an accessible format is a skill that I think it would be valuable for them to learn. But yeah,
for sure. Thank you.
Superintendent Zhang, yeah, you had your hand up earlier.
Oh, it's me.
Yes.
Oh, this is not a question. I have some comments, because I work in IT field and I did a lot of work, accessibility work, actually. So I know accessibility is not a small scope. It includes a lot of things, even the facility and the building code, something like that. But I'm not familiar with that part, but for the website, for example, and we have a lot of the technologies and provide services for all the students and the teachers. So if in the future, the accessibility committee, if there's any help, so I can provide my support. For example, if you have a work group to make a HDSB standard or need any technical support, actually, I'm professional in this field. Okay.
That's awesome to hear. I did not know that. Thank you, Trustee Jay.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions at this time? Allison.
Sorry, I just wanted to, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we did just have Evelyn Bursey join very recently as a committee member as well. So we're happy to have her. And I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that here as well as part of the Accessibility Coordinating Committee.
Great, thank you. Evelyn, thanks for the shout out. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to let you guys escape and go and relax. And thank you very much for your presentation and the work that you do. And we look forward to continuing to hear about how AODAs gets embedded in the work at HDSB. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right. right, at this point, it's item 2.2, and we're going to welcome Roxana Nagoy, Superintendent of Business Services, and her team for a presentation on some items related to this year's budget. So we have a longer period of time allocated to this conversation, and so looking forward to hearing about some of the issues that we're facing and having the opportunity to put forward some ideas and suggestions. So, Roxana.
Good evening, and thank you for having us this evening. I was just trying to see if I can project, or maybe Jay can help me, because if I do present, I won't be able to see you and see if there's any questions. So with me this evening is Jay Chantavong, the General Manager of Financial Services. And we do have a short presentation to start the conversation on budget planning for this year. And really, we wanted to do this early so that we have time to seek input into the budget planning process for next year, as we're heading into a very challenging year. Thank you, Jay, for putting it on the screen. So just quickly, the overview of the presentation is to give you a quick overview of the timelines that we're working with for the budget process, an overview on the provincial and board perspective, a quick overview of the budget components. And just as a reminder, the SEAC committee does receive a draft budget presentation with a lot more details after the grants are released. They're usually released in the spring, so this would be something we would look at a meeting perhaps in May. And then we would like to focus on what are some of our challenges and the plan for next year, so that we can set up the stage and break out into some discussions to solicit some feedback from SEAC. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of the timelines. We have started as a senior team, and we have started the discussions earlier in the fall with a board report that went to the Board of Trustees at the meeting on December the 6th. We have 2 SEAC presentations planned in January, and the other one proposed is in May, and I will be coordinating with Superintendent Ruddock to make sure that that aligns with the timelines of both the ministry's announcements, but also the special education plan, which is built in alignment with the budget and the resources that are available. In between January and May, you will see there's a number of dates that provide input and presentations to the Board of Trustees at the Committee of the Whole meetings, as well as additional feedback and consultation. We will be releasing a budget survey, and then we have a couple other avenues that we would like to solicit the feedback from the community as well. So with that, we're starting with this advisory group early so that we can hear your thoughts and build that into the planning process. Next slide, please. From a provincial perspective, and I know this is a little bit small, we just wanted to highlight a few things where we are. The education sector is the second largest component of the provincial budget. So we do pay close attention to where the province is heading in terms of their finances. In the fall economic outlook, what was mentioned is that the provincial budget is on target to look at finding efficiencies and savings so they can eliminate the provincial budget, the provincial deficit. That sits at $5.6 billion. So that means that there will be austerity measures for all of the sectors that the province is funding. In terms of the education component for the current year, our main source of funding, grants for student needs, represented $27.1 billion provincially, and an additional over 500,000 for supports for student needs and one-time funds in partnerships and priorities partnerships funding. So there's quite a little bit of money involved when we're looking from a provincial perspective, but yet the $5.6 billion is in savings is something that is a bit concerning. They're currently labor negotiations still undergoing, so there's a lot of uncertainty around that. And we have to build our budget around what information is available at the time. If we can go to the next slide. From a board perspective, we do have some funding pressures in this current year as well, and we've had them over the last number of years. Some of the things that are a challenge for our board are the fact that, in particular, some of the tables in the grants are based on old data, looking at the 2006 census and the 2011 National Household Survey, which we know is not necessarily a complete set of data, and that the demographic of our region is significantly changing over the last number of years. So it does not represent the set of data from those years. So that impacts our grants. In addition, in 2014 and 2015 year, there was a reallocation of the special education grant provincially, and that resulted in about $20 million lost for our board over a 4-year period. Federally, there has been a mandated increase to statutory benefits, the CPP and EI enhancements, and there has been no ministry grants to cover the cost for a board our size. That represents about $7 million a year. So that certainly puts quite a bit of financial burden for our system. There's a new transportation funding model, and that in itself also resulted in lost funding to the board. And over the last 4 years, the actual grants have not kept up with the inflation and the market cost increases that we've seen in our contractual services and the purchase of goods. As well, there's no expected significant changes to the grants for next year or increases that have not been mentioned to date. So we are assuming at this point in time that the grants will remain more or less status quo for the upcoming year, which means these pressures remain. Next slide, please. A couple of the areas that sum up what we've talked in terms of funding pressures that we see on the budget side is a shortfall in the following areas. You'll see the special education and student well-being are at the 17 million shortfall. We do have pressure in terms of supply costs, which are trending upwards, but the funding is not keeping up with costs. So that's a $10 million shortfall there. We also have the 2.2 million in the transportation, student transportation allocation, the 7 million in the statutory benefits enhancements that we have to contribute as an employer that did not come with funding. And then we also have a decrease in international students enrollments, which result in a loss of revenue that helps us balance the budget. So that is also something that has been impacting us over the pandemic, and we're still recovering. On the next slide, I just wanted to quickly go over the main key components of the budget, just to give you a quick overview on enrollment, revenue, and expenses. So when we look at enrollment, we have 2 slides for you. The first one is the elementary panel. We were looking at the trends in as well as the projection for the next 4 years. And as you can see, in the current year and next year, we are projecting a decrease in the elementary panel and then a small trend upwards after that. But a decrease in enrollment means a decrease in funding, as enrollment is the main driver for our grants. And on the secondary panel, we are in a decline position, which is pretty much a first for our board in many years, given the growth that we've seen in our region. So you can see that starting this year and into the next few years, we're slowly decreasing on the secondary panel. So again, less enrollment will mean a reduction in grants. From a revenue perspective, we are getting about 90% of our grants from the Ministry of Education in the form of grants for student needs, and an additional 1% in those one-time priorities and partnership funds, as well as a little bit of money from the federal government for additional language for newcomers programs. School generated funds equate to about 2.3%. We have investment income if we have a positive cash flow balance. And the amortization of deferred capital contributions is an income source that covers the depreciation of assets. So it just covers the non-cash expense. And that's about 4.5%. Other fees and revenues include the education development charges mostly, and they represent about 2%. The next slide just provides you a little bit of a breakdown from the pie chart. So we'll skip over to the expenses, and we'll leave that with the committee for review. On the expenses side, we spent about 77% on instruction, directly on instruction for our students, and another 14% on pupil accommodation. This refers to the maintenance and upkeep of schools, as well as 2.4% on transportation. And the 4% in other are mostly made up of school-generated funds, which are the extracurricular activities within schools. So really, when we're looking at direct and indirect investment into our students, we are looking at about 98% of our budget, with 2.2 being on administration. And that includes also licenses for a lot of our systems that we use for the benefit of the whole system. So for the next, this just gives you a bit of a breakdown, similar with the revenues. And we can go to the next slide, Jay. So this is where we wanted to focus our attention this time, is to just give you a bit of an overview of the current situation. We do not have the grants for student needs. We don't expect to receive them until the end of March, sometimes in April even. What we do know is that there is a regulatory requirement that we have to balance the budget next year. So this is a new regulation, and it applies to our board for the first time for 2024-2025. In the current year, so this year, we have a budget of 7.7 million deficit. So we have to identify savings and efficiencies, at least in the value of 7.7 million. To that, we have to think whether or not there's additions that we need to make to the budget, if there's any areas of gaps. We also need to take into account the reduction in enrollment, which will decrease our revenue and may increase our potential deficit. But as of right now, we're looking at about 7.7 million in savings and efficiencies for next year. And some of the things that we are looking at is, first, we're focusing on finding efficiencies within the current structures and budgets. But we are reviewing everything. We are reviewing mandated staffing ratios and the processes around that. We're looking at non-mandated staffing. We're reviewing the efficiency and of all the programs and the associated costs. We are looking at the student transportation and programs and eligibility factors, as well as at all the non-staffing or the operating budgets. Of course, we cannot lose track of the fact that there will be some areas that require additional investment, so not everything will be savings and efficiencies. But we do have to look at everything in order to be able to balance the budget next year. And with that, I think we have one more slide just in terms of what to expect over next steps. So at this point, we are going to be looking at feedback from SEAC. We are seeking feedback through a survey, as well as the Board of Trustees over a number of meetings. The feedback will be presented back to the Board of Trustees at the end of March, beginning of April. And we will come back to SEAC with more details and numbers once we have the information and the grants. Right now, the plan is to be at the May 7th meeting. And I think with that, Jay, the next one is our breakout discussion and feedback. And I will pass it back to Superintendent Ruddock to walk us through those discussions. Jay and I are here to take notes and listen, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Great, thank you, Roxana. We really appreciate that. So we do have, we are going to go into two small groups. Roxana will be in one and Jay in another. So if there are any questions you have about information that was presented, you can certainly ask those questions in that group. And then we have some other kind of guiding questions to hopefully generate some discussion. So Laura is going to send us into those breakouts, and then we will regroup back in the main meet in about 20 minutes.
So sorry, just give me 1 minute to set it up.
And just to clarify again, Colette, obviously, you know, there's a lot to process here. And Roxana, what are you specifically looking from us? You know, I obviously we would not necessarily want to cut anything. In fact, we want to add things, but we know that that isn't realistic. What kind of things are you would you like us to really kind of discuss?
So the focus for today's session is to seek feedback into our budget and keeping in mind that we're looking at finding significant reductions, efficiencies where we can do things better with less. So we are seeking your input in terms of the programs we offer. Where would we be able to look at maybe some changes? What are some of the areas that you could consider that we should be looking for in terms of reviewing of how we currently do things, how we could do things differently? It's a very hard discussion to have this year, unlike the previous years when we were a growth board and we're looking at least maintaining the same level of resources, but knowing that we had an ability to do more. This discussion focuses on savings and efficiencies. Of course, the committee is, you know, able to voice all of their comments, and we'll make note of everything. But the discussion really is open to looking at all the areas within special education that you would like to offer some input into.
Thank you.
Roxana, maybe if I could, you know, kind of highlight and really kind of reiterate some of the pieces that you've already mentioned. It's that it's, you know, the declining enrollment, the underfunding of some areas, the inability to create a budget that exceeds the allocation, where we've been able to be compliant and still go over a budget by 1 or 2% in past years, but that's not permitted moving forward. And so it's those things coming together that make this all the more challenging this year.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. I can just kind of lead us off here. So for those who don't know me, I'm Conan. I'm the Assistant Principal of Special Education. So we've also got Stacy here on staff, who's the Vice Principal of Special Education, and Roxana is in our group. So I just thought I'd start with just some guiding questions. So are there any specific questions that you had from what you heard that you wanted more clarification or information on from Roxana? So I'll just say it again. Is there anyone who has any questions in terms of just what you heard or wanted more clarification or more information on anything that you heard? All right. It seems like there's no questions on that. Okay, I can go into another thought or a question. So is there any suggestions on how to prioritize programs or services that you see? So are there any programs that you think might be priority over other programs, or any services that you would like to see in terms of being expanded, or that you feel that they could be reduced?
Hi, I have to, my kids are doing Just Dance right now, so trying to get out of the room. So my question is, because from what I understand, the LEAP program is closing for next year. And I was wondering if that's a financial reason why it was closed, because my son was gonna go, we were gonna apply for him to go into it. So is it a financial reason why it's closing, or is there other reasons? Is it a budget thing? Because from what I hear, it's a great program. And I know from other parents within my oldest son who's in the CPP program, saying that there's great funding for kids with autism and stuff, but not enough for Down syndrome.
Okay, I think we're all coming back. Just give a minute or so for everybody else to, in case there's anybody caught in the ether, to make their way over here. But I want to thank everybody for their time and reflections in the breakout room. In ours, it's certainly a very challenging situation to see, to have to consider. We did talk about the fact that this will not be the only time that we come together to discuss this. So we're going to try and make this a kind of standing item on the agenda for a few months so that people can go away, reflect, come back with maybe some more ideas and some thoughts to add to the table, so that we can also, as community organizations, go back and speak to some of our members, speak to staff that work for us about what they see as being absolutely vital, and so that we can try and do our job, which is to advise the board on how best to support special education within the constraints that the board finds itself. So it will continue, the discussion will continue, and I thank the board for bringing it to us so early so that we can actually have a fulsome discussion rather than just being presented with outcomes. So thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to have a presentation from Stacey Farrell Bangerter. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And we're going to talk about the support for behavioral needs.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm going to try to be very concise because I'm mindful of time, and I feel like that was a very heavy discussion we just came out of. And so this is what we're about to present. I mean, benefits budget, but is not actually a budget-based decision. So I would like to start with that. So not unfamiliar to us. Actually, I'm just going to share my screen. Let's see. Make sure I learned this earlier to make sure the font is bigger before I share it. Okay, got that. Share. So for those of you who don't know, my role here in our board is I'm the Vice Principal of Special Education Services. Conan and I are an admin team together, and we work with Colette. And the last few years, I have been working with our schools on our behavior resource classes, or BRCs for short. And part of what we looked at was there tended to be okay, the student has behavior, let's get an identification and send them to a BRC, which we understand the thinking of course. However, that's not where we start. We need to start in our home schools with what can we do on the ground to support the educator as well as the student, both of whom to build skills and capacity. And so we've actually had a lot of success with starting at the beginning and doing a deep dive on what can we do differently, or what new strategies or tools can we bring in at the school level. So we have arrived at a place where how we run our BRCs, the 2-year intervention, has been very successful. And so we've learned a lot, but we also have been successful in supporting in the home schools. And so we have less and less BRC referrals coming forward. We've reached a point now where they're not sustainable because we don't have referrals to keep classes running. And so it's not that we don't see the value in a BRC. And it's not that we're saying, hey, never a BRC. It's that we don't have enough students coming forward. On the other hand, that doesn't mean we don't still have behavior needs in our schools. So what we are looking at as a team is how do we address supporting those more escalated behaviors? This is behaviors that end in a behavior identification at the school level, since it looks like we have less and less students in BRCs. It's not good for anybody to run a self-contained class with 2 kids in it or 1 kid in it, because unfortunately then they don't get the social emotional learning that they need, and they can't practice their skills with other students. And then they leave a school, they go back so far with more skills, but the school hasn't learned how to be around that student, and so they're going back to what they left. And so we're looking at how do we address all of those pieces. So what I'm sharing with you here tonight is that we know that the students are better served in their home schools. That has been well established. That's not new to anybody in this group. And so what we'd like to do now is use the tools that we have developed and that already exist in our board to more purposefully support at the school level to build staff and student capacity. So we're starting with very clearly, we have our goals that we establish from the beginning when we work with the school. And they are based in the collaborative problem solving model because those goals are very measurable and the language is very student focused as opposed to focusing on what's wrong. So pursue high priority expectations, reduce challenging behavior, solve problems and not treat the symptoms. And that's a really important piece because the symptoms are what get our attention. And so sometimes they distract from the problem. Build skills for both the educator and the student and build or restore a helpful relationship. And so our job right now, what we're working on is ensuring that our team of IPLs who get called in are starting with these expectations every time so that there's a consistent approach across the board. Sorry, I'm getting over COVID and a sore throat and I'm still a little bit scratchy in the throat. So we plan on using the existing board resources to help support challenges in the classroom. So we're looking at deepening the educator understanding of the profile, the needs and gifts of students. Right now, we have a guide for discussing BRCs with schools. So again, if a school comes to us and says, okay, we're immediately going to self-contained, we say, okay, hang on, let's start with these guiding questions to find out what's been working so far, because usually something is working. Where are the gaps? And let's just slow this down to figure out what we can do in the best interest of the student, the family, and the school. So we want to adapt that. I do have a working evolution of it. It's not quite ready for use yet because this is being built right now with all the departments across the, our board on how to have those questions and tools that will be in there. The other piece we're looking at is ensuring that all of our IPLs have the skills to do job embedded coaching to create behavior and safety plans that are compliant with the AP. And that this document is guiding all of our work at every case conference or meeting that we are at. And again, for us, that comes back to consistency of our resources that we have. The resources we have are rooted in evidence-based practices, and they are trauma-informed, anti-oppressive, and anti-colonial. So for us, it's really important to stick to those. Our BMS refresh and consult. So BMS is behavior management system, and that's what we use to gather information about a student. And at the most extreme, it has the physical interventions if needed. And so right now we include student well-being, human rights, Indigenous rights in education, and safe and inclusive schools. And that has changed the landscape of how we have those conversations. And once we started doing that, we had less referrals coming forward because we were bringing the right voices to the table. So we learned that, and that's part of what we want to continue doing. The highest level of intervention, because really that's where everybody's question goes. Well, what happens to those students who would have gone to a BRC? Great question. We have SBSWs, Specialized Behavior Support Workers, in our board, and they're in our BRCs. They will become itinerant, and their job will be to work with the IPL in the classroom, teacher and educators, to develop a plan and then be assigned to that school for a few weeks. I mean, that's not, the timing will vary, to implement a plan that can support the student. And it also provides respite and relief for the classroom educators, because we need that sometimes. Kids with extreme behaviors are exhausting. They're exhausting for themselves. Their families are tired and the educators are tired. So they provide that additional intervention and support, the coaching and modeling, as well as a bit of respite and relief. So we already have those staff in our schools. So by not having BRCs, they become itinerant. And then I'm not sure if anybody is interested in the actual learning we're doing with our IPLs. We're revisiting a lot of resources and doing a pretty intensive skill development on the tools that exist in our board. So I'm sort of scrolling quickly through these, but these are all very well-known resources within our board. And I'm not sure this team right now at this time of night after that heavy conversation wants to jump into the resources, but I'm happy to answer questions about them or go back, slide back the other way if there's something you would like me to address on there. Colette, anything else that you think I should add there? I don't think I missed anything.
Thanks, Stacey. I think that's given a really great perspective, both on the why. So what is the compelling why around this shift? as well as how. So because of course we know we will still want and need to support students with behavior. So it's really looking at how do we repurpose the resources that we have, support and build the capacity of staff in our schools, and support students in their homeschool. So thank you for that.
Kate, you have a question?
I do, and the situation may have changed, but I'm going to frame it in. This was probably 6-7 years ago. At the time, and I don't know if this is still board policy, I had a friend who with an autistic child who had to leave the classroom most days early. They were called to the school. They actually had to hire a nanny because the board or the school was deciding that there was only so much of this child that the teacher was going to take in the classroom, and the child was sent home early almost every day. I'd like to understand whether that still happens regularly in the classroom, or if policy is still that children can be regularly sent home like that, and if we are, if that is an increased risk for these students, if they remain in the regular classroom where they're not getting a full school day. And I have another question, but we'll start with that one.
Thanks, Kate. I can jump in. So it is the expectation that our students attend school the full day. That is, of course, what's in the Education Act. There are times when schools may look at a shortened day or a temporary exclusion of a student in order to have time to develop a plan. So I think the legislation has gotten much tighter around the use of an exclusion, and the monitoring of exclusions at the board level is much more intensive. And so I would suggest that you would see less of that school determined shortened day piece, but I would be misleading if I was to say it doesn't exist at all. So it does exist, but under very specific circumstances for a specific purpose, and it's time limited in order to put some other pieces into place.
And part two, how are children support the full classroom population supported when there is a child in the classroom that is explosive, and monitoring their well-being, being in a classroom with an explosive child whose behaviors are not yet under control? How are we supporting the full classroom population? Because some of these children, and again, this is a personal experience coming through, and children of my friends have trauma from explosive behaviors in the classroom and develop fears and negative feelings about their classroom environment due to unmanaged behavioral challenges in the classroom.
So, go ahead. Okay, sorry. My husky was getting very loud and wanted out, and they're really hard to say no to because they don't stop yelling at you. So, I mean, that is not, that's a fair question, and that is very much, I mean, we have an expectation around administrators managing their schools and what that looks like, but we do know that skill varies among classrooms, absolutely, and how those things are managed. We can get into those details. I do want to clarify one thing before I sort of answer more in depth. That is happening with or without the BRCs. And so the focus of this particular document tonight is in response to that very small number of students in BRCs that come forward. And so those students, even if they're not in a BRC, often have an alternative learning space in the classroom. And we work on reverse integration or integration into subject areas of high interest. So for that small population of student, that is often what's in place. There's often an EA attached to them, and the certs are heavily involved. Now, I'm a secondary person, so that part was new because when they get to high school, the behavior looks a little bit different. They have a little bit more freedom to leave. So those explosive behaviors, they get angry and they tend to leave. And the supervision is very different, right? So what I've learned about the elementary is that alternative learning space is really important. And so that is a small number of kids. And in our BRCs, we don't put students who have, or we have moved away from because didn't serve the student at all, students with autism or FASD. So if there is an explosion around autism, that because of communication and frustration, then that would be very different than a student who would go to a BRC. So I feel like they're a little bit two different things in terms of what I'm talking about. But what you brought up is absolutely a very important conversation to have. And I do think that looks a little bit different in every school.
Kurt.
Yeah, and I just want to add, one of the things that we've been working on shifting is this idea of the classroom spaces for these students and not for our students with behaviors. And really kind of remapping that conversation that the classroom is for all of our students and that behavior is a form of expression or a form of communication. And so when a student is trying to communicate with us, it is the adult's responsibility to seek to understand what it is what students are trying to tell us. So, I think we need to make sure that when we're talking about our classrooms and we're talking about our students, we're talking about all of our students. And those are our students with special education needs, those are our students with behaviors, and those are our neurotypical students as well.
Yeah, and I'd just like to follow up with that as well, because if we look at the ministry list of exceptionalities, there is no space for a child with ADHD. And really, they fall into the behavioral category because they can't sit still. And so there has been, I believe, as Centre for Diverse Learners, a disproportionate amount of students with ADHD who can't fit into those societal norms being in a behavioral class, which causes great angst to parents because that isn't necessarily the right place for them. They need to be in the regular classroom and they need to be given the ability to move, and they need to have somebody understanding that they're neurodiverse and that they do things differently. Obviously trying to manage that so it's not disruptive in the classroom. But I would, again, my question there would be, of those students that are in the BRC programs, and it sounds like there's hardly any of them now, what kind of profiles were being represented? Is it autism? Is it ADHD? Are there, ODD? Or is it just general frustration? I mean, I'd just like to have some information.
Yes, there are a variety of diagnoses that can go into it. So we look at, that piece, do they meet the criteria for behavior diagnosis? So yes, there is a lot of ADHD, absolutely, significant ODD. There are some, it's newer, the, hope I get this right. It is one of the newer acronyms, disruptive mood disorder. It's DDMO. I may have mixed up some of the words. And that absolutely, there are some students who meet characteristics of needing a behavior class. And part of that is they actually have to be ready for small group work. And so we have some students that come forward, they need a BRC. And based on the intervention we offer, we have to make sure we can actually service the student. And so, things like being ready for small group instruction, being able to engage in some of those conversations means that they're ready to sort of develop some of those skills. So we actually look at it two ways. So yes, those diagnoses are absolutely there, those identifications, but we do also look at the student characteristics. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. Disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, DMDD. Okay, thank you.
And if I could just jump in and just amplify something that Stacey said is, we would have these BRC programs where students would come in for a 2-year intervention, but then we would send them back to the environment that they left. So we hadn't done any work with the school environment, the class, the educators. So we build the skill of the student within a kind of an artificial context, so to speak, but then send them back into the environment that wasn't working for them when they left. And so we've learned that if we spend the time to build the skill around the environment, we have extinguished the need for the 2-year intensive program. So I think it's a real success story in kind of rethinking how we approach supporting students with behavior and how we build the capacity of the educators in the home school that has really led us to where we're at today. And I just want to acknowledge Stacey. Her leadership in this work has been profound, and all of the staff that have worked with her on this. It's very exciting to see where we're going in terms of supporting our students, and it's really thanks to Stacey. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, and again, I'd like to reiterate that I think it's always good if we can support our kids in the classroom, and they can get the real supports that they need there, whatever they may be. So that's great. So if there are no other questions, I know we are moving on in time. So I'm going to say thank you very much, Stacey. And we will move on to item 2.4, which will be very short, I think. But just bringing your attention to a copy of the letter from the Hastings and Prince Edward District School Board to the Ministry of Education, requesting an increase in the special incidents report portion of funding. This is very similar to the letter that I was asked to send on behalf of SEAC back in June 2020. As we've seen we seem to be getting indications from the budget process, there is no change. Again, perhaps we'll have some conversations about how SEAC groups can come together to maybe advocate a little bit more strongly for some of these funding changes that may need to take place. But does anybody feel the need to or want us to do anything stronger at this time? Or we're just ready to put this into information at this stage? Okay. So we've had a lot of discussion tonight, but we are now at that SEAC discussion and question period. So if there are any specific questions or topics that people would like to raise, please raise your hand and we can deal with those now. Yes, Trustee Zhang. And can I just correct, how do I pronounce your last name, please? Please correct me.
You pronounced that correctly.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Yes, your hand is up.
Okay. So I'm Xin Zhang. I'm a new trustee member of this committee. So I believe there are a lot I will learn from you all. So today I'd like to share some feedback about the special education needs from the community, because I received some emails from the parents. So the most parents were about the class availability, and so those availability will have impact in the program enrollment processes. Also challenges in the students' relocation from their home school and the school bus. I knew several students have to relocate to another school because the program are not available in their home school. So we may start a study and find a solution for more accurate, because I know the school board, our senior staff already did a lot of work to do the anticipation about the following school year. Maybe we can find, because based on the current data and other survey, to get more accurate anticipation of the enrollment of the following school years, not only 1 year, this is for the several years. So combined with the dynamic factors, such as the students, new students enrollment, and because the population change, and also the graduation the number of students will graduate from the school. So these are the dynamic the factors. So combine all the factors so we can do analysis of the needs and the trend analysis. So the purpose of this plan, to the study of the plan, is to plan for the program availability as early as possible to reduce the needs of student relocation. Also, we can save some resources for the school buses. We know after the pandemic, school bus also a big challenge. And this is just my thoughts about the feedback I received. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And I'm sure those sort of things will be coming into our conversations over the next months. And we look forward to your input on that as well. Evelyn.
Yes, thanks. Just a quick question or comment around the AODA committee. As mentioned earlier, I have the privilege of representing SEAC, and I just wanted to be able to put it out there to all of you to welcome any feedback or questions you may have that I can bring forward. I just want to ensure my representation is thorough and meaningful, and that what you need and what you would like me to convey on behalf of SEAC, that I do a good job of that. So please send me any emails or any questions or anything via email, and I can bring that forward. Just kind of learning my role there. Secondly, and Allison, sorry, let me know if this is the wrong place and time for this. Nadina and I from Community Living Burlington wanted to ask about a future agenda item. Is that more for later on the agenda, or?
We have that item 5.0. So,
okay, I'll hold off.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Any other questions at this time? No, then we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I actually don't have anything to report on this evening.
Okay, well, that was short and sweet. So we'll now have association reports if there's any associations that would like to inform us of their things. Jennifer.
Thank you. I always have things to inform you of about Autism Ontario, but this time it's only one thing. It's the March Break Reimbursement Fund, and the deadline to apply is January 22nd, 2024. So it is an available fund for all Ontario families of autistic children and youth to retain the services of a one-to-one support worker or to attend a March Break camp. There is a maximum reimbursement of $350 per child or youth, and that is done on a randomly selected basis. So anyone who applies between December 20th and January 22nd, 2024 is eligible to receive these funds. I have shared the link with Marta, so that will be available in the minute meetings, but it is just available through Autism Ontario's website.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Sarah.
Hi, I just wanted to, hang on. Sorry. I just wanted to mention that Easter seals, for anyone who knows families who are involved with Easter seals or families with children with physical disabilities, the camp registration opens on January 19th. So I just thought I'd put that out there.
Great, thank you. Okay. And Catherine, did you want to add something? I know you're going to heading out, or do you have a comment?
We are having, thank you. We're having the voice camp will be happening sometime in the summer. So once we get more details, Aaron or I will be sending that. And ignore my golden retriever because he likes to talk. And for the Easter Seals camp, I would just say, I used to actually, when I first started out my field with Spec Ed, I used to work at an Easter Seals camp, and it's a phenomenal program and amazing kids and people who truly care about the kids in the camp. It's awesome. So anyways, thank you. And have a wonderful night. I gotta go pick up my child now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other association reports? I'll jump in and let you know from CDL. We are running an executive functioning workshop for parents this weekend. We do them regularly, but it's really supporting, it's a half-day event, supporting parents understanding how to help their children with planning, learning strategies, organizing, all those kind of things. And to let you know that the early bird deadline for our 13th annual Solutions for Learning conference is coming up. And this year we have an even broader range of topics, looking at intersection of identity with neurodiversity, so how to be more culturally respectful in how we approach support, also looking at social emotional, and we have an HDSB. I think we have, is it Audrey, who does social thinking. She's going to be presenting for us, so that's amazing. So we have some great speakers, and we're even doing a keynote on the use of AI for supporting neurodiverse and exceptional learners. So all on our website if you'd like to get more information. Okay, at this point then we have the trustees report.
Oh, good evening, everyone, again. Thank you, Allison, for that reminder. I need to register for the conference as soon as I finish this call. So now I've opened the window and I will do it. The trustee report this evening is actually more of a brief request. Obviously, it goes without saying in this virtual meeting room that special education is an important topic as it relates to student achievement and well-being. And obviously, as we've heard, comprises a large and important component of our budget. Last year, trustees committed to professional development specific to special education, and prior to the holiday break, Superintendent Reddick facilitated the bulk of that learning for us by providing an excellent overview of the special education programming in our board and the various exceptionalities. Trustees, as a part of this, would like to request the assistance and perspectives of the member associations of SEAC as well to round out our learning by answering a couple of questions. Those are, which programs and services does the board currently provide that are essential for student achievement for the students that your association represents? And secondly, are there any programs and services you would like to see offered for the students that your association represents? Recognizing, as we've heard tonight, that as stakeholders, your feedback is going to be requested quite a bit over the next few months, both for budget and multi-year plan development that the board is currently undergoing. So this request is not for an extensive report of any sort from associations, but merely simple answers to those two questions in a bullet point list. So I can speak with Chair Brindle and Superintendent Reddick about the best way to go about this, but really what we were envisioning was a simple email out to all of the associations on SEAC, or all members really, just for some brief feedback, like I said, to round out some of the learning that trustees are doing. So if that's okay, I will speak to them after the meeting, and then please look out for that. And as I mentioned, you will be seeing other requests for your feedback as we undertake both budget and multi-year planning this year. So it is a busy year at the board. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure all of the associations will be very happy to share their thoughts. Okay, so we've got committee reports. Evelyn just outlined about the accessibility and coordinating committee, and we had a report this evening. Evelyn, anything else you want to add other than any feedback we pass on to you?
Yeah, not at this time. I think it was quite coincidental that just following my first meeting that they actually came. I was like, well, this is wonderful. So, I mean, it was very thorough in terms of what they presented tonight. And I'm also, like I mentioned, just getting oriented. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, anything I could be doing to convey and pass on to their committee, I would be happy to do that for SEAC.
Great, thank you very much. Kate, the Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy Steering and Advisory Committee. Kate, are you there? Kate Lambecker? Oh, your mic's not working. Okay, all right. We'll pick up with you next time. Okay, no meeting since December. We'll pick up with you next time. Okay, thank you very much. And I don't believe that Melissa is here tonight. So again, we'll catch up with Melissa at the next meeting.
No, I think she's here. I think
Pardon, sorry?
I think Melissa was here.
Was she?
Yeah.
I think there's two of us. Yeah.
Yeah, Melissa Summer, the Indigenous Advisory Council. So,
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry. All right, so we are moving on, and I know we're going to get this done by 9 o'clock. So we're now at item 5, and Sarah, was it you that wanted to raise something about the agenda?
Oh, no, I think it was Evelyn, actually.
Oh, Evelyn,
or no, I think. I don't know. Sorry.
Would you like to raise something about the agenda?
Sorry, I definitely did. I wasn't sure if Sarah maybe also did, so I didn't want to jump ahead of her. Yeah, so as Nadina Torek and we both represent Inclusion Services from 2 of the community livings, or the community lives in Halton. And we work closely with Halton Region's Inclusion Services as well. We wanted to see if it would be valuable to SEAC if we did a short presentation on our work with CanChild out of McMaster with the framework called, which we all kind of chuckle about, the F words, which are I'm not sure if anyone is familiar working with the F words in rehabilitation services, but we're using it in special education consultation. And so it's a series of words that start with F that include fun, future, fitness, family, friendships, and I think I'm forgetting one. I'm sorry, my brain's foggy. F is for foggy too. Anyway, we use this framework in our work as a strength-based, family-centered approach, looking at what children can do, as so often children come into service and there's such a focus on their deficits and this sort of fixing narrative. And the F words have really turned our program upside down in a great way. And we really started to sort of shift in how we're doing that. And we worked with other partners across Ontario that are working on this as well. So we just wanted to offer CanChild. We have someone we work closely with as partners that would like to present some of the data of the evaluation study we just engaged in. And if that would be something that SEAC would be interested in a future meeting, whenever it may fit. So just putting it out there.
Great. That sounds wonderful. Thank you.
So put us on the agenda whenever you tell, and I have Vanessa at CanChild sort of standing by. She's eager to talk and share with everybody.
Great, great. Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then was it Sophia? Or did you?
No, I don't have my hand up. Yeah.
Okay, did anybody else have any agenda questions, comments? Colette.
I just wanted to confirm, I think we have Autism Ontario lined up for next month, but I just want to make sure that still works.
I appreciate you asking that, Colette. I have not yet heard back from our contact at Autism Ontario. They were building a presentation to share over the holidays, and holidays do tend to get away from us. Let me just reach out to Tanya and double check. Can I email you and Allison and Marta as soon as I find out? And if it's not for February, then we can definitely do March.
Absolutely. So I think we meet usually in about 2 weeks or so, right, Allison? So if that gives you a couple of weeks to reach out and see if they've got something ready, then by all means.
Perfect. I just want to make sure that we're using the official party line instead of Amanda and I just winging it, which could be exciting, but might not be relevant.
It won't be at all exciting. I can just say that right now. It will not be exciting. You want the actual presentation.
Yeah. So I'll reach out to Tanya and just make sure that we have that ready to go.
All right. Sounds great.
Thank you.
And as we mentioned, we will be having some time on the adding some space to have a conversation on a regular basis about ideas for budget and priorities. That being said, it is now 8:59 according to my clock. And so our agenda is complete. I would like to thank everybody for attending, and we will see you next month, and our meeting is adjourned.